Emily Tish Sussman is with the Center for American Progress Action Fund. She's also a Democratic strategist. And Evan Siegfried is a GOP strategist. He supported Marco Rubio in the 2016 presidential race. Emily, so Chuck and Nancy bailed. I would assume it was because of this tweet.
I would also assume that. In the statement they put out, they said the president is going into these negotiations not in good faith. So what's the point of showing up just for show? And I think it's probably a pretty good point. They also pointed out they will still try to work through regular process and meet with Republican leadership in the House and Senate with McConnell and Ryan to try to get to a deal. But how would you negotiate with the president in this kind of situation? He doesn't even, look, he's alienating his own party even as he goes. Can you imagine two issues that should have been easier for Republicans in a fully Republican-owned Washington than tax reform and repeal of health care? And he can't even come close because he's still alienating members of his own party on a daily basis.
So Evan, I mean, were Chuck and Nancy right to bail?
Yeah, you know, the president sells himself as the greatest deal maker in history, and with one tweet, he exploded any chance, no matter how remote, of having any deal in the first place. So you have Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi going to Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and saying, all right, we're willing to work with you, but the White House, that's not going to happen because the guy's so temperamental. I think we saw it before in September when Republicans got upset at President Trump because he basically gave Chuck and Nancy whatever they wanted with the debt limit extension because he wanted to spite Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan. So the president doesn't go out there and make deals. He just goes out and he tries to do what he enjoys at the moment he's enjoying.
Well, Emily, I get why he probably, I mean, it's not really necessary for him to negotiate with Democrats on tax reform because if he gets all the Republicans he needs on board, tax reform will pass. But the government shutdown is another thing, right? That's a real possibility, and he does need Democratic support to avoid that, right?
He does. I mean, he does need Democratic support for exactly the reason that you pointed out, is because not all the Republicans will get on board with keeping the government open. Look, the Republicans are in control of the White House, House, and Senate. If the Republicans were all on board in one place, then they wouldn't need Democratic support at all. One would hope that a president desire to have the opposition party on board with whatever they move forward with. But every time they start to come towards any inkling of any sort of deal, the president blows it up or placates the Republicans who will blow it up on the far right or in the center, right? He can never make deals with all of them. He can never figure out how to keep people all on board because he just makes these huge statements that throw new elements into every aspect of every deal.
Evan, I would suppose one thing in the president's favor, though, is, you know, lawmakers have they have a bigger unfavorability rating than President Trump does, right? So he can sort of bully them into accepting this tax reform plan no matter what, can't they?
Well, the flu is more popular than Congress right now. And I think that you do have what you're seeing right now with the uncertainty among several members of the Senate, I think it's up to 8 members, is some people on the, where you have Steve Daines and Ron Johnson who want more spending on the pass-through. They want billions more. Whereas you have the Jeff Flakes and the Bob Corkers who are much more deficit hawks, who think that this tax bill adding $1.4 trillion to the debt is an absolute disgrace. Then you saw it in the House, and I think there are members of the House Republicans who are lobbying moderate Republican and fiscal hawks on the SALT deduction, because in New York it would be a $72 billion tax increase on New Yorkers. In Oregon, every Oregonian would see an average of $500 increases. So this bill is far from perfect. And while I think it's about a 75% chance of passing, you lose 2 votes, and that's the ballgame.
So
right,
Emily, I'm just curious about something, because it was a chaotic day in Washington yesterday, you know, with the Pocahontas comment, right? And then you had the Consumer Watchdog group with 2 bosses showing up, and nobody knows who's really in charge.
Is that a regular day in Washington now?
I know. But does that stuff matter when it comes down to passing legislation that affects every American's life?
Absolutely, I would say so, because it takes away as a distraction. When you're trying to push the solid aspects of any sort of bill or tax plan, we can't really get any oxygen to talk about it. When we're hearing about how the president made a racist comment, and then the president goes out and says, well, Elizabeth Warren shouldn't have lied. I don't think that justifies any sort of comment that the president made yesterday.
Emily?
Yeah, it makes it impossible for the president to negotiate even with members of his own party when this is what they have to deal with. It is a distraction. But also, if you look at the overall picture of what's happened in the last couple of days coming from the Trump administration, this tax bill is deeply unpopular. It heavily favors the wealthy and corporations. It will actually see a tax increase for the middle class over 10 years. So when you get into the specifics of the bill, it is deeply unpopular and very different than the kind of thing that Trump had promised. Combine that with sending over Mulvaney to the CFPB, the Consumer Protection Agency. So he's going to gut the agency that is protecting consumers, potentially end net neutrality as we know it, and increase taxes on the middle class. It's very hard for Trump to say he is actually delivering on the promises that he campaigned on, and Republicans don't know where to go on it. Look, to your point about the SALT deduction, the state and local, that is really going to hit a lot of Republican members in their districts when people in their states see an increase in their taxes for a plan they voted for. It's very, very different than the rhetoric they've been campaigning on.
Yeah,
so it really does matter to people.
Right. In case you don't understand, you can take your state and local taxes off as a deduction right now, and one of these plans wants to eliminate that deduction. So we'll see how it all falls out. It should be an interesting day on the Hill. Emily, Tish Sussman, Evan Siegfried, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Right now, Ivanka Trump is in India, where she just gave a speech at the annual Global Entrepreneurship Summit. More than 1,000 business minds from across the United States and the world are there. And for the first time ever, more than 50% of them are women, something Ivanka Trump championed during her speech.
Only when women are empowered to thrive will our families, our economies, and our societies reach their fullest potential. Fueling the growth of women-led businesses isn't simply good for society.